I bet when you heard about Splash Mountain being taken down, you didn't expect Disney to replace it with something that diminishes the actual hardships that black women faced in the early 1900s. Didn't we just get away from this? Wasn't that the whole point in it? Yet bad decision after bad decision is leading Disney to a place where they're rewriting history in a way that's going to be very offensive to anybody who spends much time thinking about it. Get ready, I'm going to explain exactly how and lead you through the full history of the background coming up for Tiana's very bad Bayou adventure.
Gateway to the west in another time. Wondrous beauty from God's own hand. Take me back to Louisiana.
Hello and howdy. You're not going to believe how badly Disney is screwing up when it comes to the upcoming ride replacing Splash Mountain. We're not Disney haters here on this channel. You might not believe that, but it's true. We don't hate Disney. In fact, why would we cover it if we did? But at the same time, we don't always, let's say, partake in the pixie dust that some sites do. In fact, what we're actually trying to do is get to the truth of the matter, and that's what we're going to be doing today. Like I said, though, you're not going to believe how badly Disney is screwing this up. Before we get into it, make sure that you click the like button, share this out. If you're not subbed yet, what do we have to do? Come on, click that little sub button and also the notification bell. It's a lot of fun. You should totally click it and stick it to the algorithms. All right, we're going to be getting into Tiana's bad Bayou adventure and sort of dissecting how it is that Disney came to have such a horrible idea. So once you understand all of the moving parts, then you can begin to figure out, okay, here's how they have arrived at this location they are currently in. And let me tell you, it's a bad place to be. It is not unsalvageable, though. They can fix this, but they need to be doing it quickly. All right, so let's get straight into the article. We'll begin with WDW Magazine, not WDW Pro, but the magazine itself. This by Stephanie Schuster. Tiana's Bayou Adventure opening in 2024. And this one is an old one, but we need to go back so that you can see how this began. It says, yesterday, Imagineers released the Tiana's Bayou Adventure opening timeframe and a closing date for Splash Mountain. Here are the details. And it goes into sort of all the, well, actually, let's read it. Here we go. In 2020, Disney announced that fan favorite Splash Mountain was going to get an overhaul to become the Princess and the Frog themed attraction with an opening date of 2024. By the way, I'm hearing that might actually push back. We'll talk about that in a later video. Excitement is building for this hotly anticipated new ride. Sure. And we were fortunate to be invited to a special event to learn more about the plans for Tiana's Bayou Adventure from Charita Carter. I think that's how you say her name. I've never met her personally. She's actually done some really good work with the latest Mickey ride that's going in at Disneyland as well at Hollywood Studios, the Runaway Railway, and Ted Robledo. All right, let's get into this. Set 1 year after the events of the film The Princess and the Frog, Tiana has found success as an entrepreneur with her restaurant, Tiana's Place. Stop, pause. Here's what that means. That means that this is not going to retell the story of the movie, which is what most people probably would want. It also means that the soundtrack to the movie, which is hyper popular, is not going to be presented in its original form. They may work some of those musical themes back in, but I'm told that the songs are essentially original. So good luck with that. You've got hits and you're not going to use them. How about it? In the new attraction narrative, Tiana has purchased an abandoned mine at a salt dome. Okay. Woo! Oh my God. I know, I know, but just when you get back into it and you start reading again, it gets you. Who had that on their bingo card for what they would come up with? And I mean, I knew this. I reported it. I think I was the first one. Maybe I was second. Maybe it got out somewhere else. But I've been reporting on this for a while that this was their plan. But who would look at the Princess and the Frog movie, and if you were designing your own original ride for that, would go, you know what? Tiana should totally buy a salt dome. But this is the situation they're in. Okay, again, here's how we get in this bad spot. They're in this bad spot because they're trying to base a ride off of Tiana that's set in Louisiana which is one of the flattest states in the country, right? There are parts of it, many parts of it, that are below sea level. And they're trying to put this into a ride that is based on a mountain where you drop from high elevation down. So what can you do, right? Well, you have to find some kind of geographical feature in Louisiana that has any height to it. So you pick a salt dome. The only problem there is that the salt domes, the actual real life salt domes in Louisiana, are not as tall as Splash Mountain's structure. So go figure that out, right? Usually it's the opposite. Usually they're trying to do forced perspective to make the mountains look taller. In this case, maybe they'll try to do something to make it look shorter so it actually looks like the salt domes. I love it. Anyway, Tiana has purchased an abandoned mine at a salt dome to establish the headquarters for her next venture. Okay, it's not the thing she was famous for in the movie. Okay, she was a restaurateur. Now she owns a mining company. Sorry. She owns a mining company. All right. Tiana's Foods, which provides opportunities to her community members for employment and to learn business skills. I'm sorry. It's so perfect. It's so perfect. So they've got it all, man. Now she owns a mining company that gives opportunities to community members. Okay. So you got to, it's going to be like this little socialist dream. And then not only are they mining the salt, they've got to go mine the salt. But they're learning business skills while they get their pickaxe and they mine the salt. I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. And so they're going to guide guests through the bayou as they go on an all new adventure, but it's actually a salt dome. The original characters the original actors are reprising their roles. And you get the idea. Okay, and by the way, just look at this. This is the model. It essentially looks just like Splash Mountain. This is a budget change. This is a budget change. They've taken the log off, it looks like off the top. They've added a very small water tower, because Tiana now, she's got millions and millions of dollars. She's went from a scrappy restaurant entrepreneur who managed to climb her way up to owning her own restaurant and doing well. Now she's clearly, even for the 1920s, she has millions of dollars. I mean, she is really successful. She has millions of dollars because she actually owns her own mining company and all the real estate that goes with it. Don't think too deeply about that one. All right. So anyway, how did all of this happen, right? And you can see that the Imagineers went to New Orleans to walk around and do their photo ops to build up the idea that they had done their research. Okay, now let's get into this. I know I've been laughing, but it's really not a laughing matter necessarily. I mean, you do have to laugh at it to some degree, but let's get into this. Okay. So where did they actually go? Where did they come up with this idea for a salt dome and that Tiana is going to be having people go mine salt with their pickaxes and at the same time learn community and business skills? I'm sorry. It's so bad. They went to Avery Island. All right. Avery Island is, and they really went here. Okay. So they went to Avery Island to go look at the Avery Island salt dome. And it's famous because this is where Tabasco is traditionally made. It's where they get the salt for the Tabasco. You get the idea. And so that's Avery Island. But there's a huge history for this. And it goes beyond Tabasco. It goes beyond what I would say is appropriate for Disney to use as sort of the background or the inspiration for this new ride. And so let's get into why that is. But if you want to go check out more about the history of it in terms of the Tabasco history, go to iberiatravel.com about us, Avery Island. It'll be in the description. All right, so let's get really into this. All right, so here's the issue with using this, and they're stuck because they decided that was the only thing in Louisiana that had any elevation at all, so therefore she had to own the frickin' salt mine. She had to own the salt dome, and she's got to send her community members, her employees down there, and she's going to teach them some business skills while they're slaving away at the salt mine. But here's the real deal. This has real history, and we're going to talk about it real quick and why this is messy for Disney. I mean, this is real messy. Before we do, let's talk about Splash Mountain. They got rid of it because they were in a situation where they were afraid that certain demographic groups were going to boycott Disney Plus, and they needed to protect themselves. So they get rid of Splash Mountain. They make the announcement, and then it takes them years to come up with what are we going to do. We promised Tiana for this thing. Turns out we had a blue sky picture and nothing more, and this, like, we're stuck. There's no way that you can turn Splash Mountain into a bayou because, well, bayous by definition are very low level marshy areas without elevation. That's what a bayou is. Okay, what are we going to do? But the reason the reason that they assumed or projected that Splash Mountain was problematic is because it was based on authentic African folklore mythology that was brought over and then was recorded by one of the Roosevelts, actually, and then another individual, and they disseminated these stories out into literature, and then Disney picked up that literature and he turned it into Song of the South, which was the movie that won the first Academy Award for a song sung by an African American. Also gave the first Academy Award to a black man. Okay, James Baskett. He would later, according to Valerie Stewart, the daughter of Nick Stewart, who played Brer Bear, James Baskett would later die of what Nick said was a broken heart because of the way that he and the film were treated by the detractors. Now, all of that said, we know that Snow White is not authentically German in the Disney version. We know that Cinderella is not authentically French in the Disney version, right? But they're Disneyfied. And so the stories of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox and Brer Bear, the stories about them that came from Africa and came over with the individuals who were treated so terribly throughout, the hundreds of years in the United States, those were Disneyfied, authentic stories. But they had to be gotten rid of. And so what they're replacing it with now is more problematic. So here's what they're doing. So because they had to pick something that was a salt dome because that's the only thing that had any elevation in Louisiana, well, they're in a whole heap of trouble. And so I promised you we'd break this down. Here's the deal. Marsh House slave quarters at Avery Island. Yep, the place that they're going to base this on, it actually housed slaves, and a lot of them, as did many places in the Deep South. And this is definitely Deep South. That's not to be offensive to any of the people from Louisiana who are hearing about this. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm saying that there are, so when you think of the Splash Mountain story, that was a mythological story that's set in Georgia during Reconstruction. Okay. This that we're going to now is actually based on a historical location within a historical context that actually features real people, and that's why this is a giant mess. So we'll start in the second paragraph, and this one is actually, I need to tell you guys where this came from. This is rather important. This is the Marsh House Slave Quarters at Avery Island, Louisiana, by David T. Palmer, and it is an academic paper. The Marsh House Slave Quarters site, and this is talking about on Avery Island where they're dealing with, includes two small standing brick cabin structures on the west side of Avery Island. The site is a portion of the housing area for enslaved Africans and African Americans working for the sugar plantation. That's before Tabasco. That's before they began to do the salt. Established by John Marsh in 1818. Marsh from Connecticut brought enslaved people from New York and New Jersey with him to his sugar plantation in Louisiana. By 1840, the plantation was known as Marsh Avery Plantation, and by the time of the Civil War was known as just Avery Plantation. The 1860 slave schedule lists 100 enslaved persons living on Avery Island during that year. So we're basing the new ride on something that I don't see how it's any less controversial. And if we get into this, this is over on, but this is the wcaleb.rice.edu wiki, and it says that, let me get down here, there's a list of people buried at Avery Island compiled in 1878, mentions William Odell, who may be the Bill Odell, credited with discovering the rock salt at Petit Anse, as well as the names of other enslaved people. there were quite a number of servants and enslaved individuals on this island. And what I find so problematic for Disney is that they're basing something on a place that has real slaves, real people, and not just like in the idea of, oh well, we're basing this on Reconstruction in Georgia. No, no, no. We're talking about a place that's 2,200 acres and has real history to it. And now you're bringing in Tiana, a cartoon character who owns a salt dome. Well, I guess she owns this or some similar kind of thing. And the problem with that is that when you bring in a cartoon character and you bring in a little story, you you sort of bury the real historical nature of what happened, right? Because Tiana didn't buy, in reality, a salt dome. A black female entrepreneur did not buy a salt dome. And so this is rewriting history in a way that's more acceptable to today's time. Does everybody see that? And Disney wouldn't do that unless they hadn't been in a position where they made a mistake and tried to bring in a property that has no place with the type of structure that Splash Mountain is. And so then they tried to retrofit it in a way that would work, but it's making things worse. All right, so let's jump into this. This out of blogs.loc.gov. Okay, so Library of Congress, if I can talk. All right, so the individual who started Tabasco is a complicated person, but still yet, I just want everybody to have a flavor of how historical this is. During the Civil War, McKinley's family was stripped of their possessions and driven out of Louisiana into Texas. After the war, they returned to Louisiana to find most of their property permanently confiscated. The only home they had left was Avery Island, where they lived in close proximity to their former slaves. Okay, so even after the Civil War, there's history with this, and it's not small history. And again, he's a complicated individual. His family did own slaves. We flat out say that slavery is wrong, right? Slavery is the ultimate theft other than murder because you take someone's own life. You don't take it in terms of killing them, but you take it in terms of they lose their ability to go forth in the way that they want to go. At the same time, one of the things that he did was he tried to capture the spiritual songs that were being sung by these individuals on Avery Island. And so it says, his book, Before the War Spirituals, itself, problematic in the title now, is a product of its time. Its title alone will tell you that. The convention of misspelling words in order to render African American dialect is an unfortunate and almost universal feature of the writing of the time. He takes a paternalistic attitude towards slavery and the former slaves he knew so well, yet he affords them more respect and dignity than most white Southern writers of his time, which that's an odd statement too, because I think he was from the Northeast. I think anyway, prompting J. Frank Dobie to write, and it goes on. But you get the idea. He compiled a giant book that tried to capture all of the music in it, and it says to correctly transcribe the tones of the music to written notes was quite impossible, for knowing no written music and using no musical instruments in their religious meetings, they relied solely on the voice to express their devotional songs. But what a beautiful and inspiring music they produced, full of half notes, trills, and quaverings, and with beautiful voice inflections that caused the simple verse and refrain to impart to those singing and to listeners pleasure, which often excites to shoutings and tears. And so, even though this is a deeply flawed individual in terms of his family owning slaves, at the same time, he also saved many of these spiritual songs that would have been lost forever to time. And so, again, history is complicated. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to Avery Island. The problem is that now Disney is Disneyfying this very rich history that comprises Avery Island and the Salt Dome. But I'm not sure that having cartoon character Tiana go in and buy the Salt Dome with her restaurant money, millions and millions and millions of dollars it would have taken, and then turn that around and turn it into some sort of commune where her employees are singing and having fun and learning business skills. I don't think that's not a reflection of anything close to history. And so by getting rid of the Song of the South, you tried to fix that issue. And now you're in deeper because looky there. Becky Elsie, the elder of the Avery Island women, from whom McKinley obtained African American spirituals for a book. These are real people. Pause and think about that. These are real people. And Disney's going to come over with a cartoon paintbrush. Like I said before, it's not unsalvageable, but they better be very careful because these are real people who they really worked incredibly hard, not necessarily by their own will, and certainly not before the Civil War. And for Disney then to come in and have it be where they rewrite history with a cartoon character buying her own salt dome, um, I think that's probably very disrespectful to what life was really like in the early 1900s for African American women in Louisiana and in many other places, and how difficult it was for them to find success. And Disney should be very, very careful. But this is the result of making bad decision after bad decision, trying to resolve that original thing. So, I hope that I came through with you. I hope that my original premise, that I've proven it to be true. If you like content like this, where we're fair to both sides, and where I'm trying to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve, well, keep following here. Subscribe, like, share, send this out. And let's all keep in mind the real realities of history. Let's all keep in mind the best ways to handle history and the real people who lived in those times. I think they're afforded respect. Ladies and gentlemen, in this time, I must bid you adieu. But on the way out, and until I see you again, keep having fun.